Our first speaker is from Indianapolis, from the excellent Liberty Fund organization in the United States, Leonidas Zelmanovitz.
Buenas tardes. Eu não vou imponer mi castellano muy mal hablado para ustedes, así que vamos a hacer eso en inglés. Since 1990, the state-of-the-art in monetary policy has been inflation targeting. Those policies have been regarded as capable of keeping inflation low under fiat money and fluctuating exchange rate arrangements, while allowing the flexibility to manage monetary policy required to support politically the independence of central banks. I will argue today that neither inflation targeting policies are something new, nor these policies have been effective in preventing the boom and bust cycles produced by flexible monetary management, being then directly responsible for the current financial crisis, for allowing gross speculation with investment assets not perceived by the price indexes utilized to gauge those policies. In order to do that, I will present the concept of inflation targeting, brief historical overview, and its key elements. Next, the performance of monetary policies in some developed countries. But the center of the presentation will be some elements of the monetary history in the US brought in support of this paper's main contention, and finally, the conclusion. In 1971, Nixon defaulted on the Bretton Woods Treaty by closing the gold window under which the US dollars were redeemable by central banks at the rate of $35 per ounce. A new short-lived Parte was established, but in 1973 the fixed exchange rate monetary regime in force since the end of World War II came to an end. Since coin money was introduced in society, that was the moment when the world was left only with fluctuating fiat money. The only possible anchor to the value of a currency became then a nominal one to be implemented at the national level. As early as 1974, the Bundesbank and the Swiss Central Bank, and during 1975, the Fed and the Bank of Canada started to state a growth target that they were aiming at. At the beginning, their effort was to make society aware of the growth in monetary aggregates, and with them the expected changes in prices. Pressures to change the goals were soon felt. Real and political factors contributed to force central banks out of their stated goals for monetary expansion, compromising their credibility. It was only in 1990 when New Zealand adopted an explicit inflation target with reference no more to expansion of monetary aggregates, but to an aim price level measured by a price index, that inflation targeting policy in a narrow sense officially began. But what is inflation targeting? According to Bernanke, inflation targeting is a framework for monetary policy characterized by the public announcement of official quantitative targets or target ranges for the inflation rate over one or more time horizons, and by explicit acknowledgement that low, stable inflation is monetary policy's primary long-run goal. Since the 30s, most of the debate about monetary policies have tried to classify them as strategies based on either rules or discretion. Being the gold standard, for instance, a rule. A discretionary approach happens when the central bank makes no public commitment of its actions. Bernanke describes inflation target as a framework in order not to pin it either as a rule or as a discretionary kind of policy. But under the framework of an inflation target, the central bank is free to take any measure it sees fit, so long as the price level comes close to the previously stated goal as measured by an index. The key elements of inflation targeting policies are, first, that the central bank has a high level of discretion to use the tools available, and second, a formal commitment to keep inflation low. The first shows the strength of the central bank and conveys the idea that the authorities are committed to low inflation and have the power to make it. The second element may be understood in two different ways. Inflation target in a narrow sense is the formal commitment by the monetary authorities to keep inflation low, made public, as Red said, or B, the monetary authorities operationally act guided by an inflation goal, without any legal or informal mandate, or even making public their goal. The knowledge by the market that the central bank has the power to expand or contract the money supply, to raise or to lower interest rates, to impose exchange controls, to alter the level of compulsory reserves, to alter the classes of assets and the conditions under which they will grant access to discount facilities, and the power to impose new bank regulations along with their stated goal of keeping inflation low would create, so the advocates of such policies believe, the psychological conditions to actually achieve it. Proponents of inflation targeting policies argue that history shows that rules are no protection against changes in monetary policy, since changing circumstances requires flexibility. Even the gold standard offers no protection against political decisions to suspend payments in gold in case of a war, for instance. Therefore, so the argument goes, all monetary policies are discretionary to a certain degree, and the best you can get is a framework, such as the one provided by the adoption of a nominal anchor. Since the adoption of an inflation targeting policy in New Zealand, it has gradually become the policy of choice worldwide due to its seemingly success. With different grades of formality and public commitment, the establishment of price level goals by the monetary authorities without any other commitment to how the goal would be achieved has become the common practice around the globe. The historically low level of inflation achieved under the inflation targeting framework seem to prove that it is the solution for price stability under fiat money and fluctuating exchange rates, at least until the beginning of the current financial crisis. In this slide and in the following, I will show you a chart with the variations in consumer prices in some developed countries, and I would like to call your attention to the identification of 4 periods. The first until about 72 with some inflation, but still in the one-figure range. Then a period from 73 to 83 with inflation in the 2 figures range. A third period from 83 to 91 of significant but decreasing inflation, and finally the period starting 92 of relatively low inflation. Let's try to explain that. Until 73, international monetary arrangements were the ones of Bretton Woods, with fixed exchange rates pegging currencies of the signatory countries to a US dollar. Until 71, convertible by their correspondent central banks in gold at a fixed parity. However, the chart above shows that the average inflation level in those countries for the period 1970-1972 was well above 5% per year. Those arrangements were clearly unsustainable in the long run. The weakened link to the gold standard provided by the Bretton Woods Treaty until 71 proved to be insufficient to check inflationary expansion of the money supply among the developed countries, and the abandonment of those arrangements became inevitable. The American default on their obligations of redeeming US dollars in gold had huge and lasting impact. From 73 to 83, we saw increasing prices, and the next slide shows the gold price in US dollars for the period 64 to 84. Until 68, the American promise to redeem US dollars at the agreed parity was credible. From 68 to 71, when the pledge was finally broken, the increases in gold prices showed that the confidence in that promise had diminished. Still, in 71, an attempt to fix exchange rates at the devaluated US dollars without a link to actual gold faced skepticism, and the gold closed that year at a record price. In February 73, the Bretton Woods exchange market formally closed, reopened in March 73 in a floating regime. It is the first year in which the data shows the results of more conservative policies adopted in developed countries. The galloping inflation under Carter was curbed when Paul Volcker implemented a monetary policy of quantitative control of monetary aggregates. Similar policies had been adopted in Europe since 79 with the creation of the European monetary system. Three historical events, however, may explain the continued increase in prices until 91. The Black Monday, 97, the fall of the Berlin Wall, 88, and the First Gulf War.